to have the same artistic freedom as about creating this kind of, and it's really I still love that about the odd finish the game and kind of sarcasm. Matters. So people have asked why the Dear Esther's set on a Hebridean island. What's really interesting about this is it's one of those times when your kind of aspirations as an artist and the practical realities kind of dovetail. We knew that we had to have some way of limiting the player from disappearing off the play space, and when we made the original, it was a mod, and because it was a Half-Life 2 mod, you kind of had Eastern European city, spaceship, or blasted, desolate landscape. We had three options if you didn't want to start making any other assets. So it started off with these practical constraints. We don't want to set it on a spaceship. We don't want to set it in an Eastern European city, so it's got to be on this kind of like this desolate landscape. And we want to limit the player, so an island seems like a natural choice. And it's really interesting how you start from that, and we had this big lump of clay on a table that we were carving out paths and things for annoying the cleaners and things like that. And Jess talking, and Jess started sort of snippets of music to kind of go in there. And then all of a sudden we just went, oh, that's the story. Oh, that's what happened here. But it really started to think from the place. And when we started looking at photographs of Bore, we started going and reading some of the history behind it. Suddenly that was it. And it just was really, really naturally became, this is the place, this happened here, this is how it feels. And then everything else kind of coalesced around that.
Yeah, I think as an artist it made my job a lot easier, because those islands are so kind of like, the environment is kind of hostile. You're out there in the Hebrides. You've got this kind of like inclement weather. You've got cold, rain, snow. It's a very kind of it can be a very depressing place to be at times, but it's also at the same time very beautiful, and it's this kind of like stark, bare landscape, but that has this beautiful surroundings. So it's, in terms of art, I think it really helped me to portray a lot of the themes in Dear Esther.
And there was a natural fit with the music as well. It suggested a musical style, which was really key, I think.
One of the things you're always trying to do as a composer is create memorable themes. And a slight confession is that probably the most memorable theme, which is Remember in Dear Esther, wasn't actually created for the game. Rob's looking shocked. So it was actually from a piece of choral music that I'd written years before, based on a Christina Rossetti poem called Remember. And one of the things I was talking about earlier was how I didn't have any budget. So I had this piece of choral music, and I thought, hang on, this is absolutely perfect for Esther. But I don't want to use all of it. So the only bit that you actually get in the game is the first line of the choral piece of music. But that actually went on to form the main theme of the music that I wrote. And I think for me it's really interesting about how things that you've written earlier, years before, sometimes come in really, really useful and fit. So I always tell people and students not to despair if something doesn't get used or doesn't work at the time, because actually there'll come a place or in a time where you think, hang on a minute, I've got something that fits. So in terms of that memorable theme, the Remember theme gets used in multitude of different ways during the game. And one of the things it does is helps you to identify the kind of psychic place that you're in the game. So the theme is played in lots of different ways, and actually you'll notice that as you go through the game, it becomes more and more broken and more manipulated and broken down as the player goes through the journey and as you're psychologically struggling to get to the end point in the game. So music's really, really useful for highlighting the psychological mood, and we talk a lot about psychogeography, which always sounds a bit pretentious, but actually I think it's really important to what the three of us did in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dan, maybe you want to talk a bit about that.
Like the core kind of idea about psychogeography, if you're not in, the place you're in is not the place you're in, or you create the place you're in. It's not just as you're here and then the landscape's out there, but you don't navigate like a city by street signs and by those kind of formal things. You navigate it by the things which are significant to you in the way that you've lived in that space. And I think that was really kind of key to, I think it's really central to how the fusion of art and story and music come together in Dear Esther, because it's not a place where we're going, right, we have to lead the player up here because it's a natural formation, and then you would naturally have a piece of music here because you come around a corner, but the story, music and art all work around the idea of what's going on in the narrator's head at this point. How do we represent his emotional state relative to this landscape? And again, it's that idea of the game is, it's a dream of a place. It's like the idea of it being a fever dream or a coma dream, which obviously ties in a lot with the kind of story, and we'll come back to in a lot more detail when we get to the caves a bit later on. White lines.
Yeah.
They actually did this. It was really cool. I found this historical document. They used to do this on Bora and the Hebrides. If their disease broke out,
Really?
they'd actually chip out and expose the chalk. So if you're on a boat and you were coming to the island, differences, it was always one of
These are real. Was the landmark. And it really
as a player. Because you can just find those. And that's fascinating, I think.
something that I wanted to bring through in the art of the game was the same kind of fidelity that you find in both Jessica's music and Dan's writing. In the same kind of way that you have all of these little details is very that kind of really links to out as
There's a scene in Donnie Darko where Drew Barrymore's playing his English teacher, and she talks about Celador as being the most beautiful word in the English language, and it's the sound of the word. There's a point just letter to someone came